should be an audio setting for this. Good afternoon. Welcome to the local 666-269 podcast with your boy Rocco, King Size Muscle 2. Ah, yeah, I know it's been a while. It's been a busy week or so, and I know a lot of people were feeling it in different ways. We feel things all the time, so what's the problem, right? Let me just get this just a wee bit lower. I think it would make me happy. There we go. Just a bit in the background. Some horror synth retro wave body bag from our friends and fiends at White Bat Audio. Always pumping out the royalty free, copyright safe music. Excellent for streamers and podcasters. And it's dope, as they like to say. I had a couple of different things I wanted to go through this time. And I just got done talking to my bestie, uh, my hetero life mate, my bromance. What's the other one? Broner. No, I'm kidding. This poor guy has been dealing with some medical issues, and ironically, over the weekend, in my pursuit of retail therapy and serotonin and dopamine, I picked up this really amazing, very old volume here of the People's Medical Advisor, and by R.V. Pierce, medical doctor in Buffalo, New York. This one is actually the 20th edition, and it needs to be rebound. But this is like what year is this? 1898, I think. Yeah, and oddly enough, yeah, 1889. Sorry, 1889, Buffalo, New York. This is actually the 20th edition, and so this must have been a very popular book back in its day and its time. Amazing lithograph prints. That's always easy sell for me is those sort of vintage lithographs in there, and then the vintage drawings because they're all done by hand. There's no CGI. There's no Photoshop. Talking about a draftsman, doing his craft, and so there's some amazing art here. I'll post some of that down the road. I don't want to manipulate this book too much because the binding is coming off, and this is just one of those things that sort of turn up, in antique stores or yard sales or thrift stores. Specifically, this is an antique store, but a lot of those vendors are feeling it for some reason lately, and they're closing out their little kiosks and so forth. So a lot of the different antique stores I go to, will sort of compartmentalize different vendors. And they rent the space and they set up their booth, and then obviously it's kind of a consignment situation where staff there take the money and so forth. And so we have a really nice one here in Uptown Village. Um, I'd say probably for me it's kind of one of the central ones, not just because of the location, just because of the amount of things that are in there, and also the amount of people that go there as well. And it's the usual. One man's trash is another man's treasure, and of course, there's some people that are ridiculous with their pricing, um, trying to turn it into some kind of alternative revenue source. But this flotsam and jetsam that comes up from the past, it's all part of the maelstrom that is the media. And so when you're sort of stuck in that maelstrom, if you try to swim through it, you'll just drown in it. You just drown in the saturation of information from reaching out from the past of over a century ago. I wish you could see it better here, from R.V. Pierce to now, where we could see out as much of that information and data in just a few hours on the internet. So it's an interesting sort of concept to think about this causality thread of information reaching out from the past and back to the future. Here we are right now. So my buddies always had to deal with gout, and so obviously we went to get him on the air here one of these days, but he's not feeling good. So I said I'm going to consult this book for sort of shits and giggles, because sometimes you find something in these old medical books that people have forgotten. On the other hand, you find a lot of things like leeches and hypnotism. So you can see that like medicine, just like science itself, is also a work. We say a work in progress, but I like the idea of work in success because the beauty of medicine and science is the fact that with more information, more data, more cases, more anecdotes, whatever it is, it's always sort of growing and changing. It can get better, and it has in a lot of ways. And so it's another value for looking at some of this information in the past to think of what they thought. Bill Bryson's history of nearly everything starts off, of course, in the British Science Museum, and it's a phenomenal book in the sense that it gives me, or gave me, I should say, a perspective of this aspect of research and science that it does change. What we believed even 50 years ago within my lifetime has changed considerably, whether it's in health or nutrition or diet. Some of that, of course, is because the system has been gained uh, to get your FDA rating and so forth. There's a lot of good work that's been done by people like Chris Bell, who has put out Big Strong Faster, but also did Prescription Thugs, and show us kind of the way that our system works now, and you can understand why there's a lot of these complexities with private companies and pricing and so forth. The side strike of that is the hearings the other day with Representative Katie Porter from California taking one of these pharmacons to task, in the sense that big pharma always has this idea that well, we spend a lot of money on R&D, research and development, so that justifies the cost. Uh, but in other countries, that cost is not there, and essentially, when you get Katy Perry on your ass, Katy Porter, sorry. Well, if you get Katy Perry too, that's even better. Maybe make a Katy Perry, a Katy Porter sandwich. Wow, that's hold on. Let me savor that for just a moment. Sorry to be a cringy creep, but on one hand you have uh, sort of a beautiful pop star, and on the other hand you have kind of like super intelligent MILF next door that would, rip you to shreds with the facts and details with a little whiteboard. And that's the other thing I like about it. She's very practical in the approach because, she studied under, oh, I can't think of the name. They tease her, they call her Pocahontas, which is cruel, oh, jeez. The brain is gone. What can I say? I have to look it up because I just don't hold on to that kind of nonsense too much for those reasons. But notice that the weaponized nickname for that person stood in my mind and not their actual name. And so that's a good indication that when you weaponize propaganda, that you can supplant different views or different ideas. And so by teasing that person so much about claiming to be Native American and so on. And again, blood quantum is it's a whole other debate and show. Our country is the only country that sort of goes by blood quantum when it comes to proving that you're indigenous or native uh, in this country, as opposed to other ways of doing it, I suppose. And I understand why, because there's money involved. There's some funding involved. There's never enough, to be honest with you, when it comes to indigenous calls. And so let's see here if I can remember what that was. So putting all these sort of little pieces together kind of gives us a little bit of a thread or a string to kind of go along there. Oh, I'm so dumb. It's what is it? Of course, Warren, right? Is it Amy Warren? Not sure. Essentially, when during the uh, during the orange asshole administration, they're really good about weaponizing information. I mean, probably better than anybody else. And so, again, one of the greatest curses a bard could ever put on someone is a satire. And I'm sure that they're not thinking it in those terms, but the fact that they were able to satirize Elizabeth Warren with this stuff about Pocahontas, in my mind, if I forget about Elizabeth Warren, I remember the identity of her as being Pocahontas. Not that I agree with it, but that's how effective sometimes these campaigns can be for changing your mind about things. And think about people that would be maybe on the fence, and that's really what they did for a lot of people using some of the metrics, of course, in social media through their right wing fuck buddy coalition over there at Zuck Buddy. .com and Facehole and use that personal data to target a lot of people in the first round of his campaign to get them to sort of vote for him as an outlier and so forth. So that's the danger of this idea of how much data that you are giving these systems sort of freely because you are actually the commodity, you are actually the product. They're trading you the same way that countries are trading their citizens for capitalism and so on. And so tech companies, social media companies that sort of, I wouldn't say they mishandle your private data, but you know that when you sign up, you agree and basically to surrender your rights to all that stuff. I mean, thank God they still are under law to provide that for you if you want. And when people do get it, of course, they get this massive treasure trove of collected information, and a lot of it is so randomized from the microphone to the camera. And again, it's because the AI, the algorithm, is thinking so far ahead of us that when it's monitoring our information, it knows its function. Like how do we attach information in this area to continue engagement and support of advertisers or products that are being presented here. So when that happens, it's interesting to see what they do with your recordings and so forth, and how that turns into something else. And so it's part of the grand mystery, not so much, but the way that it works for a lot of people, they're just like, oh wow, it must be psychic. I'm like, no, bitch, they got your shit tracked. You gotta check out a couple of books from Edward Snowden, who actually made an appearance recently. Um, Give us another dire warning. I bet that guy's fun at parties. Anyway, sort of, hopefully, sort of a true American hero. He did try to canary in the coal mine us on this aspect, along with, of course, Reality Winner, um, who was probably one of the sacrificial lambs when it comes to blowing the whistle on the government about egregious oversight. So that's how we treat people trying to do right in this country. You know, it's normal. We fuck them over. I don't know why. That's just the way it is. Um, I guess it's better than getting randomly shot by some, cis white male who's got easy access to an AR-15, who's willing to just fucking plug holes in anything that moves. So, yeah, I'll take the latter. It's fine. Whatever. So, this book is, again, pretty fundamental to us in the sense that even if we take a look at it in Google land, and so let's see if we go. R.V. Pierce, People's Medical Guide. Now, before the googly voiceover came up, and they were basically claiming that this is a very culturally important book, as far as if we had to define the culture in America at that period, this book would be in that sort of Library of Congress file, or that vault on the moon where they store all the other good stuff. I'm making that up, by the way, just to throw it out there. But maybe I'm not. Maybe I know it, and I can't tell you. Uh, the secret moon base there. This thing's huge. A lot of pages. Again, I don't want to manipulate it too much because it's kind of on its last legs. I got it for a couple of bucks. You can go on eBay and get them. They're about 10 times that price, depending on the condition. Obviously, when it comes to old or rare books, sky's the limit. It just depends on what you want to pay for something like that. This was in the right place for me at the right time. And so I don't really discover books. I always think books discover me. Woo, 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 woo. Yeah, no, it's crazy stuff. Um, but if we take a look at the People's Common Sense Medical Advisor, there's really some funny, trippy things in here, and it's just too good not to kind of share and also kind of wind my buddy up, because that's what we do. We just always kind of give each other a hard time. So we're gonna look at I has the cheeseburger. Is that all your base are blungas? I had some difficulty finding the particular element in this book because I'm not too familiar with how they set it up. Because there's like it has a lot of stuff going on here. W. Pierce here, he starts with things like physiology, anatomy, goes into biology, and then sort of randomly goes into plants and so forth. He's famous for a lot of medical patents, including something called smart weed, which that's all you got to say is the word smart and the word weed. I'm in. I want to know what's that. This guy an early pioneer of nootropics about having the nature of the knowledge of the field. Basically, was he doing some biohacking or smart weed, something else entirely? We'll find out when we get to smart weed. Again, these things are a treasure trove of knowledge, a source of inspiration, humor, art, and mystery. Yeah, absolutely. That mystery is a good way to put it. And so, just coming in at probably just under 1,000 pages with index and maps and so on, I can see why this would be sort of culturally important. Um, I guess not only from the medical field, because he went on to be a senator and so forth, and he had a lot of other sort of funny ideas. And the Wikipedia thing goes through some of those things. But let's jump into this part here and let's talk about gout, right? And so you might see me occasionally with my real hero light here, my magnifying glass, just because there might be some details in here that I really want to get into. All right, so Fagin Ali, this is what the People's Medical Advisor from 1898 or 90 says about gout. And so gout is closely allied to rheumatism. And so, of course, I said, well, rheumatism is in the previous chapter. And so I have to go back to rheumatism, right? I'm assuming like a type of rheumatoid arthritis is probably going to come up there. It says here, and the two by some authors have been regarded as identical. So a little bit different than the usual peer review aspect of that thing. Is like, well, I read this book about gout from this guy, and I read about this book from that guy, and they say it's identical. All right, let me put that down in my book. That sounds very sort of YouTube college, basically. And so this is the medical book college of that time of the world. They, however, show distinct points of contrast, and each affection would have a separate place in the catalog of diseases. Rheumatism usually affects the larger joints, while gout attacks the smaller ones. For example, the toes, which is exactly where he's got it. The cause of this disease is immoderate use of stimulating food and drink. Let me read that again. The cause of this disease is an immoderate use of stimulating food and drinks. So now I have to think about the semantics here of the concept of immoderate use. Moderate use means that you would sort of, you know, use moderation for any of these things that you're eating or taking on nutrition. So if it's immoderate, then that means you are not doing it in moderation. You're doing it either in excess one way or maybe totally missing it the other way. And I've always said in the past, because I did get gout for a bit when I was in China, um, and I attribute it to some of the humid conditions there. But ultimately, it was really about sort of being dehydrated. My understanding, without going further into this, but I will, is gout is the uric acid that sort of builds up in the body that's not being excreted, and so it gets into these deposits here. According to this, it's in the small joints, not the big joints, and it's painful. You feel like someone's stepping on your toe. You glance or graze that motherfucker on a table leg or something like that. I mean, it'll put you down. It's actually my testes are crawling up inside me right now thinking about this. In the sense of the brain doesn't really know this the difference in the real experience versus what it's thinking, and so I just think about that because I broke my little toe not too long ago, doing something with this ancient coffee table, and bam. And so it's one of those repetitive injuries I've had over my lifetime. Broken toes, broken fingers, broken nose, um, and of course back problems, which I must say to you, I'm already feeling better. I went back on peptide therapy. I'd gotten off of it, and part of that was to see if there was some efficacy there. And like all ADHDers, I totally forgot about that experiment until something came up where it was like buy one get four free or some nonsense. They run a special. These are pretty sensitive compounds. These peptides. They're typically amino acids that do some specific things, or you can stack them to get some specific effects. This particular combination of peptides is sometimes stacked together. They call Wolverine for healing. They have all these funny names for it. But it's basically this stack is BP 157 and TB 500. And people much more knowledgeable and eloquent than I am could tell you a lot more about these amino acids in the body to reduce inflammation. And so that's where we're at. And so now what I'm noticing is that it's not so much in the back; it's in the glute, Medea reason. So I'll take a pin in that area on one side and see if it works. But it works pretty instantly, and I think I'll probably use it until I get to the point where I don't have to, because it's very non-invasive aside from a subcutaneous injection near the injury or soreness area, which on me is kind of a big territory. So as long as you sterilize the cap, you got new needles, whatever the small ones, and you sterilize the area, no problems. I've been going at it for whatever 4 or 5 months, and haven't had any infections, whatever else. Occasionally, maybe you'll get a bit of a displacement lump, and so one of the things I do is I kind of rotate my subcutaneous regimen. I used to go, right to left, right to left, right to left at a fighting place. And then because I did PT therapy in the L1s or in the area of the IT band, sorry, the IT band along the leg there. And so when I start doing a lot of cardio work like that, I'll notice that it'll start getting kind of, not so great. And so hitting it with this kind of Wolverine stack of BP 157 and TB 500 seems to do the trick. I mean, I still have pain, but at least I have mobility. If I have mobility, just like when I use the Rolling Thunder, my cart, if I have mobility, I can exercise. I get you know out of breath and sweaty and so forth, and that helps from the weight loss process. But if you got gout, if you got gout, that will definitely sort of mess up your mobility as well. You'll be around limping. And so, according to this people's guide here, you are definitely the cause of this disease is immoderate use of stimulating food and drink. So you've got to lay off on the naked sushi, my man. Plethoric persons are its most frequent victims. Plethoric, plethoric person. Plethoric to me is dealing with like a plethora, which is many, and so many people are its most frequent victims. Is that what he's saying? What an amazing sort of statement. And it's again, you see how English has changed in 122 years. That has value for me in my day job when I'm teaching because sometimes I want to look at pronunciation patterns and so on, not only from my students but from other aspects. Now I'm going to take another look at this plethoric persons. All right, plethoric. Let's see what we got here. Plethoric appearance. Oh, okay, interesting. So in medicine, it's excessive, full of body fluid, particularly blood. So if you're a big blood bag, you're plethoric. Okay. The archaic is overly large or abundant or excess, and I think because he's being archaic from them, he's probably using the archaic form because when he wrote this book, he was later in life. So I think that's probably what he's saying here is that most fat people have gout in this situation because of the way we eat, and I'd have to say that there's probably something to that. Obesity itself, of course, for a long period of time, will start to throw your body into a havoc mode of autoimmune diseases. You get so chunkied up with all the fat around your organs and limbs and everything else, it starts to break down a lot of the metabolic and cellular function of the areas that it's concentrated in. And so it's a catch 22 for those of us that have to eat a lot of calories in order to bulk up or build up when we're lifting, and then simultaneously try not to cause any spillover so excess fat is being processed into the liver and back into the body and so forth. But a lot easier said than done, especially as you get older, because a lot of those metabolic factors that allow you to sort of eat and not worry about what you eat and go have fun, work out, compete, and so forth, and sleep like a baby You remember the golden years, somewhere in your 20s, before they jaded the shit out of you. And so you had a willingness to do that on top of it. Now it's sort of like a survival instinct. Like if I don't do that, I'm gonna end up super crippled, and I don't want that for myself. I mean, I'll take any road that you want me to hoe, oh Lord of mine, or oh Lord of mine, up and down, in the sense that just remember, I do like heated seats in my car, just like cat. I do like sunroof in this mission, and of course, if you got some payday for me, I'm there. So I'll throw that out in the universe and see what happens, and then when the magic happens, I'll express it to you, like I always do. All right, so we can go on this. I'm actually gonna have to go big light here. I think this will probably help. This is how old I am. I got the magnifying glass. It says here that there are two varieties of the disease known as confluent, and what's the other one here? And distinct variola. In the former, the vesicles, yes, the vessels run together. In the latter, they are separate. Hmm. Okay, that's something I also need to kind of think about. I'm assuming that his unit is probably. I'm talking about my friend's unit, so that's definitely small. Uh, in the stage of eruption, which is what he's going through right now, is he's got the bout of gout along with the flu and everything else. And that really sort of just adds gasoline to the fire, I guess, in that sense. I got two different lights here, so that's part of it. I have to counteract it with this other light up on the cursor there. All right. Apparently, well, that's smallpox. We don't want smallpox. Literally, we do not want smallpox. Here it is. Okay. Plethoric persons, distinguishing characteristics. Going on to all right. When recent, the deposit is a semi-solid around the joints. Sorry, semi-solid cream color substance resembling mortar, drywall and mortar. Oh man, I should speak English more often. Mortarberg. Oh, yo. There's just words, if you don't use them, you lose them. I can't tell you last time I thought about somebody mortaring anything. I had to mortar the ceiling in my Chinese apartment. But I didn't talk to those guys. They just did their job and left, which is kind of my favorite. And especially if somebody else pays for it, like school or whatever else that stuck me in there. Going along here, let's see. Yeah. When recent, the deposit is a semi-solid cream color substance. One of the big old toe warts, right? And so, looks like metal shaped here. Metal sheet, is that what they're saying? Oh, this old language is hilarious. Uh, Help me out here, Lord. Where are you at? All right. Anyway, at length, these will become harder and probably, not as popular to use. But mainly, you got to be able to buckle up your pants before you get on the airplane. They don't like that when you do that. And so, if you know someone who's trying to, get through all of this, you might have them take somebody else's dog and let the dog sort of do the talking and walking for you. For the most part, it happens. Okay, moving on here to by the semi-solid cream-colored substance resembling mortar. By the aid of the microscope, needle-shaped crystals are seen to have formed around the joint, and that's probably one of the issues for you as well. Is that if I recall, you've had sort of arthritis in between your hand joints as well, and obviously your feet, and it's probably something to do with congenital upbringing, where both your daddies wear big old lumberjack boots and flannels and so forth, super butch, and then they tickle each other into crying. I actually nodded off right then. I was on automatic pilot. It kind of happens to me slightly. I did use my sleep apnea machine this morning. What I have not done is taken the speaking of pharmacies and so forth. I've taken the much needed supplements for the day. That same thing happened to me yesterday. I went so far in the day, I just decided not to do that, especially with the stimulant. Otherwise, I'd be up all night. And of course, I was up all night anyway. So I guess I could have got the benefit on one side or the other. Get a little bit low, and hopefully we can get our med appointment in. This company was doing great, and then basically the Fed said, nope, you can't prescribe Schedule 1 in telemed in this situation. And so after about August, they've got to they're trying to roll everybody over now so they can keep the source of their meds together. If I leave and I say if, it's not an if, it's when I do within the next few weeks, um, I'll just have to think about alternatives in that case because I know this is not available where I'm going. It's off world, and that sometimes is stimulating enough, unless I get brought down by situational relationships and so on. People say, well, you're placing the blame in that case. Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that rabbit hole when we get to it. Let's go back to the old gout here for 1898 and think about if we can come up with something here. So we left off with sort of the description of the gout and the appearance, and basically when those crystals form, that's probably the source of the pain as well. I have seen photos of gout crystals, and it's like any other spike, icicle or spike. And so that thing kind of shooting, even though microscopically, if you add enough of it, it definitely makes for itchy feet, sore feet, runs you down, and fatigue. We have to think about ourselves holistically in between the two camps of medicine, whether it is Western medicine or it is traditional medicine. In this case, for me, it's always about traditional Chinese medicine. I don't know enough about Ayurvedic medicine from India to make a lot of comments about it. Unlike Chinese medicine, where I took a course and I have some skin in the game in that sense. Okay. The problem here is these crystals at length they become hardened into masses, and so they assume a chalk-like appearance at that point, and are supposed to be the salts of soda. Okay, which are deposited here instead of being naturally expelled from the system through the kidneys. Okay, so why is it not being expelled in the kidneys? Is this also a kidney issue? These deposits occur in gout and are peculiar to it and to no other disease. Okay, lack of information for that part. Gout may appear in three forms. You have acute gout. You have acute gout. Hey, you're acute gout. You have acute, chronic, and retrocedent. And I would say for my buddy, it's somewhere between chronic and retrocedent. I don't know why, but within a short period of time of going back to Guangzhou and see him when he was about ready to start his male modeling career, killing himself in the gym and intermittent fasting, got his cheekbones in and everything else, and then he started dating the trainer over there. And like all the rest of us, took the foot off the gas and got a little bit dumpy again, but he's maintained his health aside from these issues. So I'd like to help him if I could. So let's go into the idea of acute gout here. And this is the form of a disease is usually sort of sudden, occurring in the night, and in a lot of short durations. The attack is marked by pain, which is generally in one of the great toes. Often the disease is extended from the toe to the hand and ankle and the larger, what's a different word here? Larger what? Oh, larger joints. Okay. Okay. So this attack is marked by pain, which is generally one of the great toes, and often the disease extended from the toe to the heel, ankle, and whatnot. And you have that for several weeks. We actually might consider that to be plantar fasciitis, which I've also had on occasion when I sort of go up in weight and then have to sort of get into a work situation where I'm moving around a lot and the weight comes down, it gets easier, but it only adds to the struggle in this case. It'd be better to go into the next gig sort of much more fit or prepared and make my life a lot easier. I just realized that my M&M handling of the morning pills did not include vitamin D. I want to cut down a little bit on that. because you can't get too much. And speaking of gout and rheumatoid and osteoid arthritis, per the recommendation of Gentleman Bill, who is a sort of an elegant fellow from the United Kingdom who lives on the magical island that I'm from, has a local wife and so on, and she was having some severe arthritis pains. And through the process of looking at the different research and white papers, a series of Japanese doctors were able to prove the benefit of boron. So uh, some people take boron kind of directly. They're not supposed to because of methylation, and it's probably not as healthy. But in cap form, you could probably put anything in cap form. I'd probably take it. That's just how I am. And so caps of boron a couple times a day seems to also help uh, not only repair some of the damage, but also build in some new patches or whatever else. Which is again is a challenge of the human mind and development is that when you try to change something like this, it cannot be done sort of in a direct way because then it's not effective. The change has to come from within. A lot easier said than done. And again, if it was easy, everybody would do it, especially if they have acute gout. It just reminds me of a cute gal, so it's a cute gal. All right. The form of the disease is usually sudden, as we said, and of course, it occurs in the night, which is the worst part when you're trying to get sleep, and is short in duration. And so I kind of think, hopefully, this is what I have. Um, Not like I did in the past, where I had it for many years in China, not trusting sort of the diagnosis. One being a Lawai or Guilo made of money, and two, I know cancer is kind of one of their specialties, but I didn't want to know. That's the truth. You gotta go. You're gonna go. All right. So definitely, if you got more of this gout feeling in your big toe, you apply a little bit of some of the mobility drills, like standing up on the opposite side of your tippy toe, and then let's see how far you can reach. Okay. You just scratch it. It's fine. Just little scratches. Not gonna hurt it. Would you do this? Would you do something like stick your hand to a car for 3 or 4 days to win? It's a pretty good deal. I mean, if you just lay on the floor, I suppose. And I think they obviously they must get bathroom breaks. I mean, they have to. Otherwise, it'd be pretty messy in there. Let's see. All right, so we've got this acute gout in one of the great toes. Often the disease is extended from the toe to the hand. Well, okay. Ankles and larger joints. Its duration varies from a few days to several weeks. Notice nothing in there about sun or sunshine and all the other things that we believe now. And then we have to go back because I know it's dangerous because it's all in moderation, which is not one of our strong skill sets. And so sometimes things get left to the back burner. I mean, to me, it's don't sweat the small shit, and as far as I'm concerned, it's really all small shit. So I try not to sweat any of it, but it does bother other people for various reasons. Fuck them too. I'm joking, being selfish and trying to be funny here. Um, okay, so you start getting you getting it sort of transfer through when you have acute, especially if the kidneys aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. It may give them some difficulty. And so gout itself can appear in these sort of three forms of being acute gout, chronic gout, and what was the last one here? Retrocedent gout. So these are really excellent words. This would be like, you know, a 9 point word. The only problem is I would say that a lot of candidates still don't spend enough time with it as a lamp, as something in their backpack, but essentially they want something that is put together. And I just totally drifted off of it there again. So hopefully these will kick in. This gets kind of scary sometimes if I'm behind the wheel. And the other day I had to go on a little mission down the road. Didn't really want to, and it was because I screwed up. I could have made a different arrangement. And there was a few times where I just did that right now. So it'd be good to catch it on video because I'm kind of concerned about that aspect of what's happening. It just added to the fucking grocery list of other shit that's going on. Either way, I'm not taking it lying down, although I might lie down when I'm doing this. Bums me out because I'm trying to read, and then next thing I know, I'm talking, and then I'm still reading and talking, but I'm not here. Who are you is somewhere floating in the ether. I'm not comfortable with that at this juncture, Doctor Strange. So give me a break. Going into the duration here, it goes from a few days to several weeks, and so definitely he gets these bouts for weeks at a time. Then we move into our chronic gout, which in this form, the pain, the heat, and the redness, which is characterized by acute form of affection. Mm-hmm. This is the second time this guy has mentioned it, and so I'm thinking he's spending his time as a doctor playing doctor. Are very slight and entirely wanting. Well, see, he's also a bit of a prude. He doesn't like any sort of homeless, ugly women, I guess. Um, and usually it's the man's fault anyway, so how funny is that? What's an unusual word? It says, I thought it was chalky. Is that, yep? Is that what it is? Yep. The chalky concretions are deposited about the joints and would sometimes make their way through the skin. In some cases, patients become crippled and deformed. So under something like retrocedent clout, basically when they asked me to put down some locations for sailing or shipping, I could only think about some of those crazy Alaskan shows, and so I named a couple of their harbors or places, and so now we're going there. And it's like, oh, geez, this is only mildly awkward, but hey, why not? Anytime you get outside of your comfort zone in order to achieve some kind of personal growth or goal, that's a good thing because you can apply that to the other areas that maybe you're struggling with when you're trying to complete things. Chronic gout in this form is the pain, the heat. Okay, good. Affection are very slight or entirely wanting. The chalky corrections are deposited, transformed from. Oh, sorry, deposited. Is that right? I can't follow here. Deposits slight or entirely wanting. The chalky connections where deposits. Why is this so difficult here? Obviously, not talking about cash deposits. They're talking about the crystal or the urea deposits. Double check. So deposits occur in gout are particular to it and no other disease. So gout is very specialized in the body. So if it does get sick on its own, they probably would just remove the hands at my request, as opposed to trying to bury me as a whole sausage. Please don't. Please don't. Please just cremate me to well burnt toast. All right, our last form here, of course, is the retrocedent gout, where in some cases the patient has become crippled and deformed. Mm-hmm. And so the stomach, intestines, lungs, or brain is amazing. We know this, like, if you go and visit my old man when he was sitting in the ice chest back there with the same PJs on every day and in the same position, and then you start to needle it or pick on him a little bit about that situation. You might get sensitive about it. He might try to change it. You can always look at the ring that he wore and sort of see that it was for somebody else. In this case, it wasn't him. It's another person. Alrighty. Gout. Retrocedent gout. This is a form in which the affection is transferred from the external parts to some internal organ, as the stomach, intestines, lungs, or brain. It's sometimes thought, seldom transferred to the heart. Okay. We know that sometimes when it comes to healers or physical therapy, they'll give you a little bit of homework and try to get you to begin to continue the process or the forgiving and so on. And they might recommend something like a light that was present in your childhood, whether it was a red light, blue light, whatever it was, so that way there was that little rattle and hum of in the background, and then you kind of veer off the second time as well. Jeez, big beeves and duck sticker on the side of a car. It caught my attention. All right, so retrocedent gout here is basically it's transferred to the external parts and some internal organs that the stomach tries to often retain, especially with the cash register. Um, yeah, I'll have to deal with that when I get back. Looks like White Audio is taking a break as well. I think I will do the same, lest I drift off one more time here. So let's pause this recording if we can. And I guess we can do it in two